Hello friends, welcome. Friends, if you recall, I recorded this video why 5G data surge may bankrupt the network just 24 hours back. This was a follow of an article which I wrote on 1st May 2025, The Unscalable Truth, Why FWA, Fixed Broadband Can't Follow Mobile Path in India, which is basically was focused on FWA. We are seeing a huge surge in 5G data because of FWA, right? Now friends, why I am doing this video today when already I have discussed about this problem in these two different pieces. One is article, another is an YouTube video. Now friends, the reason I'm doing this video is something pretty interesting which I completely missed out in the earlier two recordings and writings. What I have missed out is that when I went to the Reliance Jio's results, the quarterly result, I noticed a word UBR. Let me just show you. I'll search UBR, right? Now, when I go here, this new term UBR was quite, interesting. And I have never heard about UBR because the reference of UBR and 5G spectrum was taken as if they are two different verticals. You see, 5G spectrum UBR, and then it goes on to say, let me just go again on UBR. It says that when we say 1 Gbps at home for broadband using either our 5G spectrum or the UBR, that is the uplink and the downlink of 1 Gbps. Means they are talking about synchronous uplink and downlink on 5G as well as in UBR. Now, UBR looks like something completely different from 5G. And it was quite confusing for me because I could not make anything out of it because I really don't have any inside information, right? Then what happened was there was an article which came out. I think yesterday it came out and I got an opportunity to look at this article today. And this article the title of this article says, Reliance Jio turns UBR to lower 5G deployment cost. Friends, you recall that 5G deployment cost is very, very high. Why? Because the data consumption is high and end devices prices are also high. And that's why it is not able to scale. And it is clearly evident from the end devices price cost is clearly evident from this Reliance Jio's 5G plans, where they mention that Wi-Fi 6 router worth 10,000 rupees they are offering free of cost bundled with their service plan, right? So when I saw this article, the article which was published in the newspaper, which is on online Economic Times by Ashutosh Kumar, I tried to figure out where is this UBR technology got deployed. Because 5G, there are clear-cut spectrum which has been earmarked. 3.5 gigahertz band, 26 gigahertz band, 700 megahertz band. From where this UBR is coming and where it is deployed, because these are being seen as two different verticals. Then I went down below and I found that the spectrum band that are being referred to is 2.5 and 5 gigahertz, which are the unlicensed spectrum band. And that really dismantled my overall thought process because I cannot and I refuse to believe that these kinds of data speed, which Reliance Jio is talking about, that they are getting in their network, and they're calling out both 5G and UBR for both uplink and downlink on a consumer-centric basis to be available using an unlicensed spectrum in 5 gigahertz band. And that is what made me record this video, friends. And you will find this video very, very interesting because I really can't understand how these kinds of speeds can get delivered using an unlicensed spectrum band, right? So let's go straight to my slide and you will find this video pretty interesting. Let me just, squeeze this a little bit, and I'll also remove the ribbon. Let me just remove the ribbon to make more space, and I'll just squeeze this also down below. So the title of this presentation is Reliance Jio's UBR Strategy. Is it in 5 gigahertz band, which is the unlicensed spectrum band, or is it in the 26 gigahertz band? Because friends, you know that we clearly understand that 3.5 gigahertz band is where Reliance Jio has deployed 5G, and they are using the SA technology to dissect that spectrum into two different compartments so as to give their FWA user a certain quality of service, which is not possible in a best effort manner. So the overall 5G pipe is broken down probably into 70, 30, whatever they have chosen. And one block is clearly assigned for FWA user. Now, 26 gigahertz band is not being spoken about much. Though there was a press announcement where Jio said that they have done all kind of deployment, but there is 1 gigahertz of spectrum lying idle in 26 gigahertz band. Now, emphasis is on UBR, but the spectrum bands are not being called out. Especially in the Reliance, if you look at Reliance's announcement, the quarterly result announcement, there is no reference of any spectrum band. They only talk about UBR. So I am making a speculation here, friends. It is not a video which I am doing where I know the facts for sure, and therefore I am calling it out as a disclaimer. But this is going to be a speculation based on facts, friends. And you decide whether whatever I am telling you is logically correct or incorrect and should be discounted altogether, right? So that's the whole purpose of this video. So why I believe that UBR, which Reliance Jio is calling out as a separate vertical from 5G, which is their homegrown technology with a lot of innovation, which they mentioned in their quarterly result, why I think that it is being deployed in the 26 gigahertz band. Why? So that's what we are going to discuss in this video. Reason is simple. Reliance Jio owns 1 gigahertz of exclusive license spectrum in the 26 gigahertz millimeter band, which is lying completely waste. Lot of spectrum versus the 3.5 gigahertz band, where you only have 100 megahertz of spectrum. In some circles, they have got 130 megahertz. 5G millimeter wave CP, right, which is typically the millimeter wave 5G with all kinds of 5G capabilities, is very, very costly. It is not possible for anybody to offer that free with a tariff plan of only 100 rupees per month. Bundled with the tariff plan, it is not possible, friends, simply. So this is very, very costly, and that's why we are not seeing, operators are talking about 5G millimeter wave CP. Most expensive among the FWA categories, even more expensive than 3.5 gigahertz CP. 3.5 base FWA CP are relatively more affordable. But if you look at the license condition and look at the trend, the worldwide trend, nobody is deploying Wi-Fi in 26 gigahertz band, but it is possible to deploy Wi-Fi physical layer in the 26 gigahertz band and take advantage of this huge chunk of spectrum. Because what happens, friends, is that whenever you are deploying a particular technology, let's say 5G millimeter wave physical layer, they call NR, the new radio technology, you do so to harness the capacity of the spectrum. Now, let's say if you have got a lot of spectrum, there is no need for deploying an advanced technology like 5G in that particular band of spectrum, where a lot of spectrum is possible, where you can deploy a much more lesser technology which is costing much less at the end device, so that your band can be fully utilized, which is currently lying free. So instead of deploying 5G NR, possibly the UBR is a Wi-Fi technology being deployed in the 26 gigahertz band. This is my speculation, friends. I don't know for fact. I'm just telling you very, very frankly, this is my speculation. Because it allows even a cheaper CP compared to the conventional 5G millimeter wave, right? So it enables Jio to offer FWA with a bundle free device at 800 rupees per month price points while maintaining cost efficiency, right? Now let's look at the band structure, because it is very important to understand, because whatever we are doing in this video, friends, we are going one step logically forward, right? So it is important to compare 5G unlicensed spectrum band, because the article mentioned 5G, right? Which is possible. You can make 5 gigahertz unlicensed spectrum band. The article talked about 5 gigahertz unlicensed spectrum band, which you saw, right? Let me just go back into these articles so that the viewers who have missed out, they can see. Again, let me just zoom in a bit. See, in India, 2.5, it may be a speculation, I don't know, because maybe the writer is, just speculating. 2.5 and 5 gigahertz. I think 5 gigahertz band is the most ideal choice for Wi-Fi outdoor deployment, right? But Let's look at the band structure of 5 gigahertz unlicensed versus 26 gigahertz licensed band. We know that if you look at this band structure down below, you'll see that it is broken up into two pieces. This is one block and this is another block. This block starts from 5150 to 5350, which is 200 megahertz, and there is a gap here. And then 5470 to 5875, which is 405 megahertz. Now, the problem is that all the 5 gigahertz, you might have seen in your home router, 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, right? Two types of band classes available in home Wi-Fi router. All these 5 gigahertz are lying in this block, which is 5150 to 5350. Generally, I don't think there are any CPE, home CPE, which is available here. So this block, which is 5470 to 5875, is relatively free from interference as far as the home devices are concerned. But there are a lot of ISPs which have deployed point-to-point network for middle haul purposes, because they are not deploying it as a CPE to the customer. They are deploying it for middle haul purposes in this block of spectrum. What is that? 5470 to 54875, which is 405 megahertz of block of spectrum. Now, if you have 405 megahertz of block of spectrum, you can do a carrier size for Wi-Fi of 160 megahertz. Wi-Fi actually works on carrier sizes. It can be 80, it can be 160, it can be 320, right? And in the next slide, I am going to explain to you how Wi-Fi technology works and how a conventional license technology works, right? How it is different from each other. Whereas the 26 gigahertz band has got 1 gigahertz of spectrum, and it can support 3 into 320 megahertz of channel size. The 5 gigahertz band, if you are using for Wi-Fi, it will support 160 megahertz, two channels. Whereas 26 gigahertz band, because it has got 1 gigahertz of spectrum, it can just support 3 channels of 320, much double the size, and the number of channels are also higher. Here only you can support 160 megahertz of 2 channels, which will only fit in 405 megahertz. Now, Wi-Fi works on a principle of frequency hopping. This we are going to discuss in the next slide as to how licensed spectrum work and how unlicensed spectrum work. What is frequency hopping? Now, if you have a large block of spectrum like this, which is given to you exclusively for deployment of any technology, and you are using this for 5G deployment only, means that you are harnessing the capacity of this block of spectrum, maybe 100 megahertz or 1 gigahertz, whatever, using 5G technology, then you have got full freedom to extract or harness the full capacity of this block of spectrum. Means every bit of megahertz can be extracted to drive very, very large bandwidth to the end consumer without wasting any spectrum, because this is not used in a collaborative fashion. Multiple people are not going to work in this block of spectrum because you bought it through auction, so you have got exclusive right. Whereas in case of a Wi-Fi block of spectrum, let's say if this was the block of spectrum which was used for Wi-Fi in an unlicensed mode, then what happens is that the technology assumes that this spectrum block is shared among multiple people. So instead of assigning the full block, what it does is it breaks into smaller block size of 160, 320, depending upon what fits. And then the technology does frequency hopping, means it selects dynamically which of the block is lying free or relatively less interference. Therefore, in case of unlicensed operation, full block of spectrum is never used simultaneously. You will always use a smaller size of block. It can be 80, it can be 160, it can be 320. Now, if you have a 26 gigahertz band with 1 gigahertz of block of spectrum, then you can fit 3 blocks of 320. That is why you have a huge block of spectrum, interference free in 26 gigahertz band for using for FWA, where the CPE prices are going to be much cheaper. You don't require the fancy 5G technology to consume the full block of spectrum, because FWA will not scale, because the end device prices are actually going to be bottleneck. You cannot drive the prices so low. As I told you in the earlier video, you will never be able to bundle those devices with your tariff plan, which is so low of 800 rupees per month. That is what I believe is what is going on. And this is the reason why I am saying that putting UBR in 5 gigahertz band with just 405 megahertz of spectrum. Let me just show you again in this slide. 405 megahertz of spectrum with so much of an interference caused because of multiple operations with no SA capability, no network slicing, no SLA, because you are positioning your FWA, what? For DTH replacement. You are going to watch 4K video, HDR video, which you cannot do in an unlicensed spectrum. And therefore, to me, it makes a lot of sense to deploy Wi-Fi in the 26 gigahertz band spectrum. You understand the logic, why I'm speculating this? So the regulatory compliance, let's look at the regulatory compliance, whether it is allowed legally in India or not. Now, use of Wi-Fi physical layer in licensed 26 gigahertz band is legal in India. Why? Because both the National Frequency Allocation Plan as well as the license document is tech neutral. And I'm going to show you how the license document reads and what kind of constraints are there, and you yourself will decide. There is no mandatory use of NR technology in license spectrum. Now let's go to the document, the license document, and let's read the license document. Now before I go to the license document, there is one more document which I have to focus on. What is this document? This is the notice inviting application of June 2022. This is a document which has got a much higher pedestal of legal standing compared to the license document, because this is where the auction took place, right? Now, if you look at read the language of this NIA, which is the document on which all technology deployment of the auction spectrum band is anchored upon, right? So it reads that the successful bidder shall provide details of the technology proposed to be deployed for operation of its services using the spectrum block assigned to them through auction 1 month before the license. And if the technology happens to be GSM, WCDMA, LTE, CDMA, IMT 2000, 5G technology, then it is 1 month. In case the switching is switching over to a different technology, you read the word switching over to a different technology other than GSM, WCDMA, LTE, CDMA, IMT 2000, while rolling out of the network for compliance of rollout obligation, information regarding the new technology should be given at least 6 months before the new base station is offered for testing. The technology should be based on standard approval ITU and TEC. So this is what the notice invites. So which clearly says that you can deploy Wi-Fi because this is a TEC compliant technology provided you give 6 months notice, right? And let's look at the license document. The license document allows Wi-Fi here. So that's why I'm basically saying that it is legal in India. Only difference, see, another advantage of deploying this in the 26 gigahertz band, the UBR technology, because the UBR technology, let me just go to the next slide because that will make things much more clear. That is why 5 gigahertz for UBR is not viable for Reliance Jio. 5 gigahertz band is unlicensed and shareable. Interference is unavoidable. Power limited to 36 dBm, EIRP. It is including the antenna gain. So which makes it low reach. It has to be maximum you can drag to, let's say, 1 kilometer. Even if you have a line of sight, and still you will not get the speed. Whereas in 26 gigahertz band, it is a fully compliant license spectrum with no such limitation, power limitation. You can do 57 dBm and therefore you can drive high. Imagine 36 dBm versus 57 dBm. Huge difference. 3 dB is double, right? So there is no SLA and QoS possible in a shared spectrum. But it is possible in the 26 gigahertz band, insufficient bandwidth because 405 and you can do a carrier size of only 160 megahertz impedes throughput and symmetrical FWA, right? So strategic trade-off using 26 gigahertz band for Wi-Fi. Loss of native 5G feature will definitely, there will be a loss of native 5G feature like size slicing and all those beamforming, etc. But 1 gigahertz of bandwidth will compensate for this in the FWA context because your device price is going to will become low. 3.5 gigahertz, 100 megahertz has the limited spectrum. Therefore, it makes much more sense to deploy all those 5G features like slicing, network slicing, beamforming, etc., because that is needed in order to prevent the best effort traffic to start contaminating the 5G traffic. Hence, deployment of advanced SA feature is must for meeting SA SLA in case of 3.5 gigahertz band. So the critical policy question now is what? If let's say 26 gigahertz band is used for Wi-Fi deployment, what is the policy question that we need to ask? So there is nothing wrong. Nobody is doing anything wrong, illegal. As I told you that it is absolutely legal for anyone to deploy Wi-Fi in 26 gigahertz band. But the question here is that the TRAI reports 5G data usage on a quarterly basis. Now, if you are using Wi-Fi in 26 gigahertz band, then it raises reporting concerns. Wi-Fi is not an IMT advanced technology. FWA data via Wi-Fi might inflate 5G statistic. If this is true, then TRAI might need to classify such data separately. So the summary table is 26 gigahertz band, licensed interference-free, higher EIRP, most expensive CPE, right? 5 gigahertz band is unlicensed, high interference, low EIRP, cheapest CPE. And therefore, Wi-Fi in 26 gigahertz band is legal, though it is not IMT technology, but suitable for affordable FWA. So the conclusion here is that Jios FWA over Wi-Fi in 26 gigahertz band is absolutely legal. Now, I'm not saying that they are doing it, friends. Don't get me wrong. I am not saying that this is what is happening. But given what they are saying, right, to the external world about complete symmetrical uplink and downlink, 100 Mbps downlink, 100 Mbps uplink, it is not possible in any way, I think, in 5 gigahertz band, which I explained. Therefore, it makes a lot of sense for them to deploy the UBR in 26 gigahertz band because of the reason which I have explained. However, it diverges from the true 5G NR capability, but they don't need the true 5G NR capability because so much amount of spectrum is there. So they can trade capacity with capability because there is no point in using all those 5G NR capability in a spectrum band, which you have got plenty, right? TRAI and DOT must reconsider classification of data usage if that is what they are doing, because it makes no sense to classify this data usage as 5G because this is not 5G if UBR Wi-Fi based technology is deployed in 26 gigahertz band. That's all, friends, which I want to talk about. This is not, again, I want to make a disclaimer. I am not claiming that this is exactly what RGO is doing or Bharti is doing. I am saying that it makes more sense to deploy Wi-Fi technology in the 26 gigahertz band because FWA deployment in India is going to be challenged, which I have already spoken about in my article and in my video, that FWA does not scale because of various factors, economic factors, network constraint factor, pricing factor. And therefore, in order for India to really reap the benefit of data, all kinds of flexibility should be allowed. I'm not saying that, you should not be deploying Wi-Fi in 26 gigahertz band, but we should be open enough to accept what we are doing. And therefore, we cannot bundle this data usage as 5G data because that is going to be an incorrect representation. That's all, friends, which I want to talk about in this video. I hope that you like this video and let me know what your thoughts are, and I'll come back with a new video on a new subject next time. Thank you for listening till the end.